Today we have on Lindsey Rowe Parker, who is a parent to an autistic daughter and herself got an adult diagnosis of ADHD, and so has been gaining a deeper understanding of her own sensory experiences and delving into the neurodiversity community, learning all she can from neurodivergent voices. And we're going to be talking about her first picture book that she did with our other guest, Rebecca Burgess, which is Wiggles, Stomps, and Squeezes Calms My Jitters Down. And so there's Rebecca. Thank you for joining. Rebecca Burgess, she is the illustrator of the book, and she's a comic artist and illustrator working in the UK, creating award-winning published and small press work. And they also love drawing comics, cuddling their cat, playing RPGs with friends, and going into deep dives into history. So great to have you guys both on here with us today, and you are going to be interviewed by Savon Hong, who is the author and illustrator of the best-selling children's book series, the Super Fun Day books, including the latest that just came out, Avery G. and Scary Industry. Savon's inspiring books focus on neurodivergent challenges with perseverance and bravery. So I'm going to pass it off to Savon interview, but thank you all for being here.
Thank you so much. That's a great introduction. I just want to start off and say thank you for everyone to be here. Just getting to talk about autism acceptance and kind of in the guise of literature is such a fulfilling kind of activity, and I'm really proud of Multicultural Book Day to be able to come out and do something like this. I wanted to start off, and it's interesting, I don't know if I'm supposed to see everyone, but I don't see everyone, so I'm going to assume everyone is there. I want to start off, Lindsay, with you. If you could tell me a little bit more about kind of the impetus behind being an author. Did you always want to be an author? Kind of what drove you to create this incredible book that you've created, which is called Wiggles, Stomps, and Squeezes, which I have read to both my kids and they love it. So what was the story behind the story?
Well, I mean, it took a lot of twists and turns to get there, honestly. I taught preschool many years ago, and at that point I wanted to be, a children's book author, but life takes different turns, and I didn't pursue it for years. And then I had some kids, and I kind of got back into the world of, kids' books and looking at what was out there. And then, as I was learning how to raise an autistic child, and kind of understanding some of the sensory differences that I actually had also when I was a kid that never had names, I started just writing down little snippets of our day and how things, how we experience the world and what I saw my daughter experience. And that kind of formed into Wiggle, Stomps, and Squeezes Calm My Jitters Down. I didn't start out to write that book. I just started out to write, little snippets of our experiences. And once it kind of came together, I was like, this is what this is. This is what this is. And I was so lucky to find Beck on Twitter and engage them in this. And they were so willing to, jump on board with the project, even though I'd never done one before. I'm like an unknown author, but they love the manuscript, and I don't want to speak too much for you, Bex, but I'm so lucky that you joined the project with me.
Bex, can you jump in there and talk a little bit about what it was like to get kind of the transcript of this story?
Can you hear me okay? I just want to check because it's really windy here. Am I all right? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. Well, when I first got the script, I thought it was amazing just because it so perfectly described all my experiences from when I was very small. I've said this before, but I like how Lindsay put to words some stuff that I couldn't describe when I was a child. And I could never find the right words for it. And I had a lot of trouble with some stuff and got quite stressed out, and my mum couldn't figure it out either. So my first thought when I read the script was just, oh, it's nice that we can put words to something so that little kids can like describe their inner feelings better. That was my immediate reaction. And that's what's so great about the book for me anyway.
Well, given that the three of us are kind of neurodivergent, and I'm sitting here with my fidget toy because I could never do this interview without it. What were some of the challenges that you have faced as being an autistic illustrator? Do you think that that has made you a better artist? Has it allowed you to do things differently or see the world differently because of that perspective?
I think it's made me more prolific because just because I really, really love drawing, like more than a normal person, I think. Like I spend more time drawing probably than most other professional artists I know. So it's quite good in that sense in terms of like actual work. Yeah, I think it's hindered me a little bit as well in the sense that it's very hard to network. I can't really do the networking thing, like go to parties in London and meet new people who will get you jobs and stuff like that. I can't really do any of that. But that's what my agent is for, so I don't need to worry about that anymore anyway.
See, we can always outsource all the difficulties. What about you, Lindsay? You said that, you know, you were a preschool teacher, you didn't have a background in publishing. Like, what kind of challenges did you face when trying to launch this book? And for those of you who haven't seen it yet, this book has won 5 awards. I mean, she has gone out there and has spread the word about sensory issues in the most incredible way. But I'm sure on day one, it felt a little overwhelming.
Yeah, I mean, the book got rejected a lot at the beginning, and that was probably the hardest part. I didn't feel like writing it was that hard because it's a personal experience and it was fun to write it. And working with Bex to illustrate it was also incredibly fun and not a hard process at all. It was to find a home for it with a publisher who was willing not only to take a chance on us, but also understood what we were trying to do. Because without Bex's illustrations, it's kind of hard to understand just the words. She's like, well, how are you going to do this? And how are you going to show this? And, Bex just brought it to life with things that I would never have even thought of doing. And that is, that's why you have somebody who is incredibly talented and who's also lived those experiences. That's how you get that kind of, how it jumps off the paper at you. And you're like, oh, okay. I understand. So
when you started to kind of pitch the book, did you first pitch it without Bex and then you found Bex and she did the illustration and then you repitched it? Like, what was that process for all of those budding authors out there?
So in traditional publishing, and this is only from my own experience, I don't want to give all like this is the only way, but in traditional publishing, you pitch your manuscript without illustrations typically, and I hit a lot of roadblocks that way. And once I decided, hey, traditional publishing might not be the right space for me. And I also, being ADHD, I was a little impatient with the process. I wanted to go as fast as possible. And so I found a hybrid publisher, which is BQB, Boutique of Quality Books Publishing. And my publisher actually has a daughter a granddaughter who is autistic. So when she read it, she understood it, and she was willing to take a chance on me personally. And part of being, being able to have the additional control of having a hybrid publisher is that I needed to find my own illustrator. And at that point, I knew that I wanted to find somebody who understood those lived experiences, which is why I went hunting on Twitter. And Bex has, a nice following on Twitter where they share all of their yes, you do. I see you shaking your head. Share your artwork and your just a lot of helpful resources and things, about being autistic. And I just knew at that moment that I wanted to see if they would work with me. And I mean, you did, and I appreciate it so much.
I just want to kind of call out what you were talking about this challenge in the publishing space in terms of diverse books, which many of us know the representation in the publishing world for any kind of diversity is very, very low, but particularly books that show neurodiversity. And I want to applaud you both for getting this out there and sharing it, because the more books that are out there that show neurodiverse kids, the more that publishing world is going to start seeing that there's a business to be made. They can make money off of this, which at the end of the day is what they're trying to do. So for any of you guys who are watching, if you could support Bex and Lindsay by getting their book and writing a review on Amazon and posting about it, kind of, it's on us as neurodiverse people and parents to kind of spread that word. So that's my little plug for you guys.
Thank you.
When you think about the future, are you guys planning to team up again? Lindsay, what's next on the horizon in terms of books?
I don't know what I'm allowed to say. Bex, what am I allowed to say? We are working on something. I don't know what we're allowed to say about it.
I can't share anything, but we could say like small amount, I think would be fine.
But yes is the answer.
Yeah, I got an editor at a bigger publishing company, and I really like Lindsay's writing, so I told her this next book we should see if we can pitch it to a publisher where it will get a wider audience, because her writing just deserves a wider audience. I personally think so. So we're kind of like, we've worked together, we've collaborated with my agent, and now we're working on something, and I'm really excited about it.
Me too.
Good. Well, that means there's something coming up in the future for us to be able to keep looking for. Bex, when you grew up, there wasn't this notion of Autism Acceptance Month, right? It was not kind of the normal thing to talk about in April. Can you tell us a little bit about how kind of the more normalization of neurodiversity has impacted you as an autistic illustrator or woman?
Well, I wasn't diagnosed until I was an adult, so I guess it's impacted me in that way, in that I know about it. Although I feel like it was still relatively unknown when I found out about it as an adult. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's just impacted me in the sense that I think it's just made life a little bit easier as time has gone on, because nowadays, if you disclose to someone, then they're more willing to help you. Like, I had an incident last year after I was vaccinated where I fainted. It was pretty funny. But, like, I mentioned that I faint a lot because of sensory overload. And I think it's the first time I've had, like, a really, like, what I would expect reaction where the person didn't make a big deal out of it. But they didn't dismiss it either. They just took me to one side. They said, "Do you want to, like, go somewhere to sit down?" Which was really good. And, like, just took me somewhere quiet where my body could calm down, which is really nice, because most people would either start patronizing you or or just, like, act as if you're being over the top. So it was nice that someone was just, like, practical about it, you know, like, "Oh, this thing has happened. I know how to deal with this," you know? That was good. That's what I want, realistically. That's, like, the best outcome you can have, hopefully.
What drove you to finally get diagnosed?
For me personally, it was actually for medical reasons, like, was the reason I got official diagnosis. Like, I think before then, self-diagnosis worked in the sense that I could find lots of stuff online to help me with various things that have just helped me navigate adult life. But I started having medical. I've got endometriosis, and I have to go to the hospital a lot. So I ended up getting an official diagnosis just so that when I go to the hospital, I can get treated in the right way. Because otherwise, before then, I'd go to the hospital and be overwhelmed, and people would think I'm just nervous. So, so then they'd like do things like try and reassure me and talk to me. But obviously, if it's sensory overload and not anxiety, reassurance just makes it worse as opposed to making it better. So it's things like that. Yeah.
Lindsay, what about you? You were also diagnosed later on, not as a child. What kind of made you go through that process?
I actually got into a car accident, and afterwards, I had a really tough time just getting back to normal. And there were a lot of things that I know now that I was having sensory overload, and I went through some neuropsychological testing to try and figure out what was happening. And lo and behold, there it was. It was, anxiety and depression, PTSD, and ADHD all together at once. And it was surprising in that moment, but after looking back on the entirety of my life, I was like, oh. And, my parents were not surprised at all. They already knew that I had ADHD from being a kid. But 40 years ago, they didn't talk about it. They didn't, tell me. And so it's been nice to kind of learn about myself during this whole thing. And I think it's honestly a blessing in disguise.
Did you go through a process of kind of anger or confusion? I know I was diagnosed when I was 47. It was after my two kids were also diagnosed, and they looked at me and they're like, "Mom, it's your turn." And because I knew what was coming. So of course I had to do it. I couldn't just let them have the neuropsychs. And I went through the process knowing that I would have an ADHD diagnosis. And even when I got it, I still went through I don't want to say grieving, but more of an anger process where I was like, I wish I had known this when I was 7, 8, 9, 10, and it would have made school so much easier. Did you go through any of that, or were you just like, nope, this makes sense?
A little bit. It was more of a sadness for my, child self. I wasn't necessarily angry. I think I felt bad for, my childhood self, not knowing and just thinking that you're weird and thinking that these things you're not trying hard enough, and all those things that you kind of internalize, as being wrong with you when you're just not getting the supports that you need. And it was relieving. It was relieving to know, that all those times that I just thought I wasn't good enough, that's not what it was. So, but yeah, it's an emotional journey through it. And like I said, I'm really thankful that it happened.
I want to ask both of you guys, because this is a children's book and it's targeted to young children, and you're both coming from it from different perspectives. What advice would you give to parents whose kids are newly diagnosed with some sort of neurodiversity? Bex, let me start with you.
I think we might have lost them. It looks like there's a problem with the connection.
Oh, no.
Well, Lindsay, are you still there?
Yes.
Great. Let's try it with you then. And then hopefully we'll get Bex back on. So advice you have for parents. And I think this is so helpful given that you do have a teaching background and you're a mom and an author. So what would you tell parents whose kids are newly diagnosed? What advice would you give them?
I wrote a whole blog on this because it was such it's been a hard journey, and I think you can make it harder or you can make it easier. And I was so lucky to not know a whole lot about it, so I didn't have so much to unlearn. But I think the number one thing I would say is to, seek out autistic voices, people who have already lived through that experience, who have that daily, it is their life, and listen to what they have to say. Be okay with having to unlearn things, giving yourself some grace when you get things wrong. I get things wrong all the time still. And instead of beating myself up, you learn again and you move forward. And I think another really important thing is to watch who you surround yourself with, because again, you can make it harder or easier. And if you surround yourself with people who, complain all the time or have a very negative outlook on their child or their child's disability, it's going to be a lot harder than if you surround yourself with people who really support your neurodivergent child, yourself, and find those supports for you in your community that can, just give you both a better life. So those would be my things.
There's a lot of parents who homeschool their autistic kids, and I've seen a lot of conversations between whether it's better to send them to public school or better to homeschool them. Do you have a perspective on what has worked for you? Obviously, you're like an N of one data point here, but what has worked for you there?
We have, since my daughter is in kindergarten right now, we have done mostly just public school, and then some other day programs, but I mean, she loves school. I think it's absolutely going to be per family, per child, per situation. We've also been very lucky to have really good support system around us as far as her educators and her therapists and her teachers. And so I don't know what the answer is. I think if that changes for us, we'll change what we're doing. We actually just moved here in the last week, so we're going to have to start a whole new school. And so it might look different. My answer could be different in a month, but kind of, what I said earlier is learning and unlearning things. And, if at any time it doesn't work anymore, you can change it, and we'll see what happens. I hope she loves school at this new place as much as she did at the last one.
I think what I keep hearing from you is almost the sense of trusting your instinct as a mom, right? That you're going to know your child best. And of course, we all make mistakes, but that as a mom, as a parent, at the end of the day, what's going to work for your kid, right? And I think that's particularly important when you parent neurodivergent kids. So did we get Bex back, or have we lost her?
I think they're not. I haven't seen them come back on.
Okay. So I just want to wrap up by saying, please follow Bex. They are on social media, on Instagram, and then obviously on Twitter. And then follow Lindsay as well. She has the most amazing website that's full of incredible resources. And one last plug for Bex. They have created this unbelievable comic strip about what it's like to be autistic. And they have made it public and free for anybody to share. Take a look at it. Share it with other parents. I sent it around. We have a special education Facebook page in our town, and I sent it out, and parents were wowed with what it said. They were like, can we share this with the special education teacher? This is what my child is feeling. So if you haven't seen that comic, you must download it. And like I said, follow everybody on social media and do what you can to help support neurodiversity in books. Thank you, everybody, so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.